how do you convince hundreds of millions of people to give you the most powerful job in the world? Very carefully, with great intention. And this is a great question. What is going on with the screen behind Kamala Harris during her DNC candidate acceptance speech? And also, what was going on with what was going on behind Donald Trump at the RNC? I'll show you in a second. We've been breaking down the fashion moments, right? The moves that these people make to tell a story beyond the one that they're saying with their words. And we talked about how this is important for us to know because when we walk into a boardroom, a classroom, a date, anything, understanding and wielding the use of narrative storytelling, using what we have in our hands to shore up the truth about who we are and who we believe ourselves to be and what we want. All of that matters. It's important. It's how we move about in the world. We're visual creatures. Now, there's, of course, this thing about like, oh, isn't it sexist to talk so much about the clothes? Isn't it a lot to talk about isn't it superficial that we're talking about the details of like what's in the background? Like, why does it matter? And I will say time and time again, anything that gives somebody a massive amount of power and does so in a way where we're not really questioning it or we don't even realize how it's happening is worth paying attention to. Stories built this country. Stories enslaved people. Stories took rights away from people. Stories got people back those rights or gave them rights they never had in the first place. Who tells the story? How they tell the story, why they tell that story is incredibly important for you as a member of the democracy. So if you think your clothes don't matter, if you think the visuals don't matter, they do. It has brought us to this context. But Jessie brings up a really good point here, that subtle switch, right, as she gets on the stage between this blue background to this warm oak wood panel looking background. Now, you remember before this, there was the RNC, right? Donald Trump took to the stage after surviving an assassination attempt. And the background was massive American flags, the White House, this great blaze of glory. He is being returned to his rightful place, right? He is the former president. He is going to be president again. And they've got this massive White House in the background. It was I don't even have to tell you, it was very obvious. What I immediately thought when I saw this was like, oh, this is all playing into this story he's been telling, this lie, we should say, because this is what the facts have borne out, that the election was stolen from him and he has been president this whole time. He was supposed to be president. So this is why he feels really comfortable, approving this background of him at the White House. Of course, it's hopeful because it's where he believes he is supposed to be. It's what he believes is owed to him, and he believes that this is his time. So, of course, he puts the White House in the back of him during this speech. Now, how is this a little different from what Kamala is doing? She's also giving us this visual of her professional and at work with that background. But she has to be very careful, right? Because there's something about Black women, South Asian Black women, in power and what has been attached to her as a woman in politics, right? There's this narrative, this racist and sexist narrative that has gone around that anything she has is because of what she did. Like, she slept her way to the top, she stole, she's not really smart. It's the whole idea that she doesn't deserve to be there. Now, the way you make a lot of that irrelevant is you don't full on address it, right? You don't do what the Hillary Clinton campaign, Maggie Rogers talks about this a lot, that part of what sunk the Clinton campaign was this constant responding to Trump attacks. It spread the attacks. We were all talking about them, and it made those dings, those dents against Hillary that much bigger because that's what we were focusing on. She doesn't do that in her speech. We talked about this in the last video. It's all about just her vision as for the country, where we're not going, where we are going, her professionalism, and she keeps hammering how everything she's had, she's earned. All the intellect, all the professionalism, all the experience, she went out, she did it, she accomplished it, and now she's coming back and saying, I'm worth this position. The wood paneling, which it lends itself to the idea of the office and timelessness and tradition. It's great because it doesn't assume that she's just taking the White House, but it does have that quiet confidence. So she's kind of, she's getting to show that she's a professional. She's getting to show that she has every right to be there. But if she'd put the White House behind her, people would have seen that as presumptuous. Another thing we saw throughout the DNC was when, for example, Angela Also Brooks came up and spoke, how the background changed into like these wood-hewn panels with lights of hope, these little fake candles shining. It was different from the RNC messaging because it wasn't one of, we are assuming power we've always had. It was more of, we are of the people. We are of the earth. We are the people who were downtrodden at one point. We have laid the ground. We have laid the foundation for this country. And now we are part of the civil rights movement, part of the ongoing, unfolding story of America, rising from the dust, rising from the ground into glory. We are full of hope. We are full of joy, and we know where we've come and we know where we're going. That was the thing. If they had done like royalty, Black Queen, like just power and like all the different DC buildings in the back, people, again, would not have perceived that the same way as seeing an older white guy who looks like every guy that's ever been president taking his natural place. Another thing is that the Democratic National Convention is trying to change its image, right? Instead of it being like, oh, we are the coastal elites, that's the lob that's been thrown against them. They want to look like they're of the people. They're for the working class. They're not all billionaires. They're not all movie stars. Yep, there were movie stars there. Yes, there were all those shiny, bright people. But they have to counteract that with a backdrop and a visual image that kind of brings it down to earth. So when you have Kerry Washington out there looking gorgeous, looking fabulous, being who we know her to be, you also have this kind of toned down look. The other reason they have to go with this rustic Americana thing is because the major racist charge that tends to take root during elections when you're standing in line about to go vote is that she's not really American. That none of these people are interlopers, they're fakes, they're cheats, they're just coming in, and they don't really know what real America looks like or normal America looks like. So it was very intentional to say, no, we are America. We've been America. This was part of the speech. It's part of the story. It's part of why there's so many American designers. Now, she did not wear an American designer. She wore a French designer, Chloe. And so there was some about that. But she was going with a designer and a custom group of people that she'd worked with before. She knew would look good. This was probably not the time to take risks or take chances. And what all this does is it kind of undercuts and undermines the lies that I told you about that are swirling, that are walking into the room long before she's there. We all have experienced that, right? Where you go into a place and you find yourself interacting with people who have assumptions about who you are based off of what you look like or what your gender. She's an American. She has an American story. She's a hard worker. She has earned all these accolades, right? She has an extensive experience in history of substance and has a track record that is quite different from her opponent. Part of what is working so well is she is making him irrelevant. She's just doing her job, right? She's in her blue suit. She's got her regular old background. She is conveying normalcy, levity, seriousness, and that's what we needed. It is to my great annoyance that every time I look back at a video, I am thinking, comma, la, but then I do what I do normally, which is how I say the word comma, which is comma, and then I say Kamala. It's very annoying, but it is what it is, and I'm so sorry. I apologize. Her name is gorgeous. We should take the time to pronounce it correctly. The youth will lead us. They told us, the little kids, her nieces, they already told us how to pronounce it. Also, I completely forgot to say, I have a podcast. I have essays. It's all linked in bio. Sunday, tomorrow, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, I will be coming live to talk about the Lacey Peterson documentary that came out on Netflix. I watched all of it in 1 day, 1.5 days actually, and it is still one of the #1 trending shows on Netflix, and it is worth looking into. So if you want to hang out with me and talk about that, please come. I will see you later.